But can you buy a house for $1 million?
I can't afford this life.
See, here is a life tip.
If you're one person,
I can't be sad today. I have to work.
And wisdom tooth, you don't necessarily need them.
I remember that $100 I gave my mom, and she said she'd hold it for me when I was like 7.
You know that saying that our parents were like, "There's food at home."
There's absolutely food at home.
Yeah. And this together.
Okay.
Saying this is so us. I come running for advice because it's you I trust. I got your back. I got your back.
Wow, we have a lot to talk about today.
But first,
Coffee.
yeah.
Welcome back to the show. We're very cheesy. You're gonna get used to it eventually. But this is the 3rd episode of But First Coffee. It's me, your girl TG.
And Hawi.
And together we are Awaze. We're starting to get a little comfortable here.
It's the 3rd episode.
I don't want to get up.
You don't want to get up?
I don't want to get up. For today, we're kind of going to be venting the whole time, which I feel like the audience loves to do.
Because our first 2 episodes, the audience was getting to know us better. So people were getting to know who's Hawi, who's TG, and now we're all going to be able to have like a say in this next topic.
ወደ ቁም ነገሩ ስንገባ ማለት ነው ኑሮ ተወዷል. That's basically the theme of today's show. Here's what I find funny. My parents, working class people. My dad and my mom both had jobs. They were able to work, save up, buy a house, have children, raise said children, middle class family. And in my head, when I grew up, that was how it was going to be. I was going to have a 9 to 5. And that said 9 to 5 was going to somehow amount to me being able to buy a house and a car. And reality is often very disappointing. Is the best way I can put it, because my dad talks about this a lot. He bought our house in Awaze, where they still live. He bought it about 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And he specifically said that he paid 9,500 birr.
30 years ago.
Yes. So 30 years ago. And you've seen my house, right? So there's a big house, and then servisallo. You can park 2-3 cars in it. I'm not very good at kare, so I can't explain how big it is. But that house, Kibebew, not the house itself, it cost him 9,500 birr. And in my head, I'm like, if I go to Bole for a dinner, for a friend's birthday dinner, I would probably spend 9,500 birr.
But see, the value of money at that time and now, it's not the same.
Very different.
So granted, how much would 30,000 or 30 years ago, 9,000 be worth today?
A lot more, of course.
Yeah.
Maybe even $1 million. But can you buy a house for $1 million?
No. Can barely buy land for $1 million.
For 3?
It depends.
It depends
where.
on where.
And Addis, no.
I do think when we do talk about inflation, we have to talk about it in sort of separate terms. I'm not saying it's easy everywhere else, but we do have to talk about Addis Ababa as target number 1 as the most expensive city in Africa.
According to the living index in the continent, I think this was 2022. Addis Ababa was number 1 in the entire continent of the most expensive city to live in. And I was like, are you serious?
More than Cape Town, more than
Cape Town, more than Nairobi, more than Lagos, more than, Casablanca, more than all of these places.
Yes. I remember Nairobi was at number 12 or 14.
It didn't even make the top 10.
And we were like, we could just walk.
Yeah, no, it's expensive to live in Addis entirely.
And it's gotten aggressively worse the last couple of years as well. And here is the part that we're struggling with. For a lot of us, we're just coming into the workforce. And, there's first jobs. First jobs are probably unsurvivable at this point. I think I'm very glad that my first job happened a really long time ago, because we did actually make ends meet, and we took our paychecks and we were able to pay rent and like pay for groceries and do all of that.
We didn't have a lot after
with our
that,
teeny,
but we were able to survive. Yes.
So I am like in shambles for people that are just joining the workforce.
Question. What is the difference between middle class, lower class, upper class now? Because I feel like the divide is probably outrageous.
Yeah. I told you as soon as I saw that article, I called you to be like, so we're not in middle class anymore.
I want to know, because I'm not sure the average person knows anymore.
It's different. It like different reports say different things, but for the most part, the consensus is for a 2-income household. Both people need to be making at least 30 to 40,000 a month to be considered middle class.
Individually. So like together,
60 to 80,000 a month is considered middle class.
What if you're one person?
I'm alone.
What if you're alone?
Do I count?
Yeah.
So these are, again, there's different researchers that say different amounts, but it's around, there's more. There's ones that say 50. But that is what is considered middle class in Ethiopia at the moment. And again, you have to look around at your friends, at your peers, at your coworkers, and be like, we've been middle class our whole life. So this is interesting.
To no longer be
I didn't think when I
middle
started
class.
making money is when I'd leave middle class. That's not what I
don't think anybody thought the divide would become this big. I think you just thought, I'm in middle class. I'm going to stay middle class.
I have access to the upper class. I'll eventually get there.
At some point, God willing.
Now you need a lottery.
Are you serious?
That's short of a lottery and or a miracle.
You like, honestly, hard work is one thing, but the way inflation works in this country, it's becoming to a point where people are starting to feel hopeless.
Yeah, and we joke, but for the most part, it's unsurvivable conditions.
Yeah,
like it's all hee-hees and ha-has, but especially to stay and live in Addis, it has reached a sort of a tipping point where people are just here out of sheer will. That's the conclusion we came into when people will talk and say, well, እንትን ኢትዮጵያ በቃ like it's ቸርነታቸው ደግነቱ መድኃኒዓለም ያቆየን እንጂ compared to how much everything costs and how much an average family makes, the fact that we are still living in the city is kind of hard, because the math doesn't add up. You're like, well, how did you pull that off?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know how the average person is surviving.
That's what I mean.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
The math is not mathing. Like, people are really out here like God has his hand.
That's what I mean.
Because honestly speaking, I've talked to several different people, and I can say that we live privileged. We might not live exactly the way that we want, but I can honestly say that I live a privileged life, and I'm so grateful.
So do I.
But at the same time, when you talk to people and they're just like, you know, I can't do this, or, you know, I can't afford this, or I have to think about this. And you're just like, wow, like, how long are we going to keep living like this where people can't handle it anymore?
Yeah.
Now, so many people are like, I want to leave. I can't see myself.
Immigration is kind of crazy.
Whereas I have heard so many people say, I never thought I would want to leave the country. People are like, the only hope I have is to leave the country.
That's tough. And again, we are saying this from a very privileged perspective. We necessarily just have to feed ourselves and keep ourselves healthy. We don't have a whole bunch of responsibilities. We don't have a lot of people leaning on us as well. So whatever we make, it goes to us, to our homes. We might help out here and there with family, but for the most part, we live very isolated lives where the only people that we're responsible for are us.
One thing I've seen in our generation, not just only here in Ethiopia, but also around the world, particularly like millennials, and I guess you can say Gen Z starting to, people are starting to get married later, and people are starting to, delay having children, and people are, unable to, again, purchase homes like how they were in the past, simply because life is becoming impossible. It's not just only here in Ethiopia.
It's not an isolated incident.
It's literally becoming a global phenomenon where people are like, it's not just in one country. It's not like, oh, that's their problem and it has nothing to do with me. So many people within our age group are experiencing the same thing.
Absolutely. And it is international, which I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse.
You kind of feel like, okay, we're in this together.
If we fix it, but then the rest of the world doesn't fix it, then
are we getting it together?
I don't know. So the fact that it is an international thing where we've already given up and we're only starting life. That's what it feels like. It feels very, why should I try so hard? It's not like I'm going to achieve anything.
Right.
Why should I put that much effort into anything? Where is it going to get me? I'm still not going to be able to own a house.
Yeah.
It's kind of the overall sentiment that I got a lot of us young people have.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, with inflation comes things related to it. So the idea of the pursuit of happiness, of settling down, of starting a family, of things like that, they all have to unfortunately be pushed back or just postponed or delayed because you simply cannot afford to do any of those things. Mm-hmm. It's not possible. And so it leads you to wonder, what is it that we have left? What is it that we're striving for? What is it that keeps us going?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it doesn't necessarily feel like things are getting better.
Where do you see the future in the next couple of years for yourself? For yourself, because it's hard to talk about other people, but for yourself in terms of where you see the country going and how you think life is going to be for you. How do you think it's going to be?
If I have to talk about me specifically. So right now, what it takes to survive and live a moderately comfortable life in Addis. I have a full-time job. We have this. Mm-hmm. We hope it's successful enough so I can quit my full-time job. We learned earlier on, you need one job to pay the bills and another one for your passion. And that's what we do. That's what we've always done. So full-time job, freelance as a voiceover artist. I freelance as an MC as well. Mm-hmm. So I have several freelance jobs as a translator. And then my dream job. So overall, 3 things, occupying my time and are a source of income. I will only be able to keep up this 7 days a week to like 16-hour a day type of lifestyle for a while. It's not like a super sustainable thing to do for, for your mind, for your body overall. So I'm hoping that the economy picks back up. It's not even that inflation is bad. It's also that business is slow for most people, if that makes sense. Yeah. Over the last 2 years, especially, it's not just things cost more. It's we're not even working as much as we used to work to be able to afford these things. And the way that people in Addis especially work and operate, a lot of us work freelance, for example. And as opposed to focusing on the job and meeting deadlines, you're over here arguing with clients about, hey, you have to pay this much. It's just such a hassle. So within the next couple of years, I would like to see the sort of professionalism elevate, where a client does what they're supposed to do, like whoever is hiring them does what it's supposed to do, and we can keep things pushing. And the economy picks back up, where people are not scared to invest in Ethiopia anymore, because that's what it kind of feels like. It feels like after COVID, everything died. Nobody's interested in taking risks in business anymore. Nobody's interested in investing in new ventures anymore. And it just kind of feels like we've lagged. So I would like to see it pick back up. I would like to see more energy in just the work industry overall.
I think the issue is this. I think especially with people, a majority of people work a 9 to 5.
Dude.
And so the pay increment is not there. Like, you know, the payments, your salary is not increasing, but your rent is increasing, gas is increasing, the price of food is increasing. So I feel like there needs to be a balance. You can't sit here and make everything increase and my paycheck is not going
It's
up.
the same.
I can't afford this life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like there needs to be a give and pull. People have to be able to afford things to be able to live. And honestly speaking, everybody has a breaking point. People are people. You know, like at some point, you have to, like, I think, see where it is as a people, at least the majority of people. Because you're saying now, middle class is what? And I don't know how many, like, percentage of Ethiopians fall under that. It's a huge percent. Obviously, it's more than half. So I feel like if the salary increases, because we're talking about 9 to 5 here.
We're talking about 9 to
People
5s.
who have their own businesses, I think that's another struggle in its own. But 9 to 5s, please, if we can have those go up, I think that's the way that people are going to be able to live a sustainable life.
At least catch a break. Jesus, let us breathe.
Are you kidding? Like, I remember one time, and it makes me sad because last year I had like my wisdom tooth that I needed to remove, and it was making me crazy, bro. Oh my goodness. And I was like, I got to get this out. And wisdom tooth, you don't necessarily need them. So I was like, I got to get this out. And the relief that I felt immediately. But then I experienced other people who I work with who also had the same pain. And they're like, I don't have the money.
I can't afford to.
I can't afford to. And I'm like, man, because I couldn't sleep, bro. Like, I would wake up out of my sleep and cry because I was in so much pain. And I was like, I can't imagine not being able to afford something that you need. This is not even just a luxury. This is a necessity. And so I think to come to that point, it's scary. And I think that, you know, us talking, there's so many people who can relate. And there's a lot of people who might not even have the time to grieve or to vent and who are like, I don't have the time. I
gotta
make
go
it
to
work.
Yeah. I can't be sad today. I have to work is the motto of our
It's
generation.
very real. Yeah.
And again, imagine you have kids. Imagine you have family you have to support. You have older parents you have to take care of on top of this. Oh, I will keep you in my prayers because, again, we're talking about this from a very privileged perspective.
This is very privileged.
We're sitting on our high, mighty little chairs and saying, if we're struggling.
I can't imagine. And honestly, it breaks my heart because there's so many stories that you hear and many that you don't.
Yeah. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about, where it is there to look forward to.
Yeah.
Like what is...
Because we don't only want it to be despair.
Yeah.
We want people to feel like there's hope, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, eventually. So we'll get to that. We'll talk more about it, guys, after the break. Don't go anywhere. All right. So we're back at it. And we want to talk about how well we think, I have to say think, we know the price of living here in Addis Ababa.
We talked off camera, and I am under the impression I know nothing.
I thought I knew a little bit. Apparently I don't. But let's go through some of the things and see how well we think we know certain standards of living.
Yes. A disclaimer, I don't do the shopping in my house. Like, I don't go and buy anything.
For me,
I don't do the budgeting either.
I buy a lot of things at once since I'm one person, so I don't finish very fast.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so then things can
it could go up and down. We don't really know our monthly expenses.
Yeah.
For me, it's, again, I work pretty much all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband is in charge of budgeting and buying things, and he just kind of takes care of everything. So I barely ever ask, how much did a thing cost? Unless it's like a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
I think a couple of months back when I had to buy like timatim or something, and it cost 120, 130 birr, my jaw hit the floor because it's ቲማቲም ነው.
Yes.
ቲማቲም ነው.
But it goes up
It's
and
tomatoes.
down all the time. It doesn't stay fixed, you know?
True. It went down eventually.
Yes.
But that offended me.
I know.
Because why?
But again, particularly like around the holidays, these kind of things, like, you know what I mean, fluctuate too. What I don't like, for example, I'm a water drinker. And I buy, like, you know what I mean, the pack, the 2-liter pack most of the time. And so what I don't like is, like, about 2 years ago, a 2-liter was like 12 birr.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, what? Is it $30?
Is that 30?
Is it 30 now?
35.
35.
Wonderful.
See, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. I don't know. Because I buy the pack. And now I'm upset.
See, here is a life tip. Get a jar. Always get a jar. Never buy individual bottles. I mean, yes, the jar.
The filter, you're saying?
So the jar where you just have a pump at the top of it and you give them the jar back and then give you...
I had that.
Okay.
But then, like, I stopped. So I went back to getting the 2 liters. But yes, either way.
Here's a saving tip for you guys.
That's what I mean when I say that there are prices like this that keep going up and that don't go down. Whereas, like, you know, onions, like tomatoes, they will fluctuate.
For sure. Rent is one of the major expenses in Addis, right? Alongside transportation.
Yeah.
So what is the average rent in Addis Ababa? Let's
Apparently,
say
I don't
1-bedroom condominium.
I don't know. You know why I don't know? Depending on where you live in the city,
It's very different.
it's going to be different. And at some point now, recently, it doesn't matter where you live. It's almost kind of starting to become similar. The gap is not as crazy as it used to be, unless you're living like in Bole or something like that.
Yeah, there is a minimum though. And I want to know what the minimum is.
Of like a studio?
Of like a 1-bedroom apartment.
Apartment or condominium?
Condominium.
Okay, what's a 1-bedroom condominium, guys? We're talking to, you know, our people off camera.
20
For 1 bedroom. Condominium.
Depends on the place.
Koyifachik is 8,000. If you're a good
See? So transportation also plays into it. Even if you live far away, you're still more or less going to pay the same as somebody who lives in the city.
So if it's at like Koyifachi, you're paying maybe 8, 9, 10,000. But to get to Koyifachi, to your place of work, if you work somewhere else, you'll make it up in transportation.
Yes,
one way or another.
Exactly.
I guess my neighborhood is better. Don't come to my neighborhood.
You're not going to disclose your neighborhood.
I don't want you to make my rent more expensive. Jeez, I'm trying to survive too.
My area is ridiculous.
So for a 1-bedroom condominium, decent. I think it's like 16, 17 if you're not trying to be in the center of the city. But you have to think of it in the who is making 20, 30, 40,000 a month. Because you need to have money left over. You can't just pay rent and sit in the middle of the room and eat imaginary things. Like you need to go to work. You need to, especially if you have kids, you have school fees for kids, their clothes, their shoes. They grow so damn fast. You have to buy clothes so quickly.
Yeah.
I personally feel like I want to give every parent a hug because it is not easy. And so rent is 15, 16 for most of us at this point.
You know, I'm going to be honest. I think who makes life difficult in terms of rent.
We're coming for realtors at this point.
The brokers.
The brokers too.
They're making life almost impossible for people.
Dalala needs an episode by itself.
Yeah.
Not just because they're inconsistent with the price, but it's more scam than work.
Of course.
It's more, hey, I'm looking for a 1-bedroom close to the street, and they will call you about 97,000 times, and each house they show you has nothing to do with what you asked for.
I'm a witness. Because remember when I was recently trying to move, and there was one broker who was like, I got you. And I was like, do you? And was showing me what I didn't want, a place that I didn't want. And I was like, okay, brother, leave me alone. And apparently they give your number to like other people. So then
That's
you'll have a whole bunch of other brokers calling you and be like, I heard that you're looking for this, like, you know, kind of house and this area. And I'm like, how do you know this?
Who
and
are
then
you?
before you know, it's like a network of people calling you. And I had to like block everybody. But it's come to a point in which brokers are the new scammers. I'm sorry, they're out here making a lot of money. And people are like, you know what I mean, needing a place to stay, and they feel like they have no other choice but to pay that amount.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, for those people who live around that area, their rent increases because of the new, you know, payment or wage that these other people were willing to
Pay
give
for it, yeah.
And now I'm affected.
And now it's coming at me in my pockets.
And I'm catching a stray.
Yeah.
Why? You know what I mean? So I feel like they're not making life easy for people.
Absolutely. I think both of us over the past year, both of our rents doubled.
Yes.
In the same house that we've lived in the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been any updates made to the house. Nothing changed except for the price, which is a little bit more than twice as much as it was. And this all happened at this one time.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of brokers that neither one of us moved out and looked for a different house. We were like, we'd rather pay more than twice as much than have to deal with a broker at this point. But that's because, again, we can afford to. So when you can't afford to is the real problem.
What do you do?
What is a day outside cost? These are the philosophical things I want to talk about. You wake up in the morning, you leave, you have a taxi commute, you have to have breakfast, lunch, and maybe a little snackaroo.
Oh my goodness.
And then you have to take transportation back home. So what is the average Addis Ababa person have to leave with in their pockets or in their wallets or in their ATMs to be able to come back?
Can we be honest? A lot of people are missing meals because they can't afford to eat every meal because you just don't have it.
We call it fitness, but that's not what it is at all.
We're being honest. Some people are just like, I can't afford to eat every single meal because it's just too expensive. You know what I mean? And so people, of course, are taking from home food. You know that saying that our parents were like, there's food at home?
There's absolutely food at home.
Yes.
One thing I know in this inflation is there's food at
There's food at home.
home. Go home.
So you just take whatever you eat from home, obviously. Transportation, especially on my side of town, it sucks.
Yeah.
It really sucks. But I have the luxury of having a service because of my work. And I know it's a luxury because I remember when I was first working there and before I started, you know, taking the service, I was getting to work. I was struggling.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I'm so serious.
Yeah.
So like, imagine people are doing this every single day. And to me, the only way I can survive in Addis if I were to take public transportation is to leave my house so early so that I can beat the traffic, beat the people. You might have to get to where you're going so early, but it is what it is. That's what I'm saying I would do. The average person, they're struggling, like I said.
Yeah, for sure. So how much are we saying? An average, what does it take for you guys? How much do you spend if you have to spend the whole day outside? 500, 600,
800 a day?
One meal at a restaurant in Bole is 800.
It is. It is. And honestly speaking, 800 is like, I know it might sound like
conservative.
Yes. It obviously sounds like a luxury, but it's like you're looking at transportation. Like if you drive a car too, you're looking at food. You know what I mean?
And
like
you can't survive without a cup of coffee. So everybody has a cup
everybody
of
has
coffee.
to drink coffee. There's so many things. So what about the rest of you guys? How much do you guys use within a day?
I don't know. I just got here. Is the response that we got from the audience.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say about that much. About 800 is if I had to spend the entire day outside and I didn't pack a meal from home, which I don't.
We don't pack meals from home.
If I'm home, I'm home most of the time.
I need my food for home. If I pack my food and then I eat outside, what am I going to eat when I go? I have to cook again. And I'm so sorry, guys. If I can conserve my energy being out all day, I don't want to go back home and cook again. And I know that's something that a lot of people do, and I feel that. But for me, I want food at home to stay at home.
Yeah, Howie's biggest expense is going to be food. It's going to be that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when you add all of these things up and then you look at the average income of an Ethiopian, it's not great. But we're not talking about these things to make you more depressed, because obviously you're aware of this.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've all sat down and been like, man, I shouldn't have tipped that guy that $10 2 weeks ago. I could have really used it. You know, man, I really I remember that $100 I gave my mom and she said she'd hold it for me when I was like 7. Like, if I could get that back right now, I feel like it would really help me get to the end of the month.
Yes.
Those are the math things that I'm doing in my head at the end of the day to try and make it like maybe. So,
or you do the math of, when am I going to get my next paycheck and how am I going to survive until then?
Yeah.
And you eat like whatever basic meals that you can eat,
prayers,
and you're like, Jesus, help me to get to the end of this month. And then you do, and you're like, I'm never going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spend as much. You find yourself mismanaging your money.
So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is as horrible as inflation is, I think I can speak for myself when I say, if I was better at managing money, it would be easier.
I'm also bad at managing money. I have to learn the hard way, clearly.
I don't. I learned this month, but the next month happens. And I'm the type of person that gets my paycheck every week.
Oh. So some people are too privileged, okay?
It's not a huge paycheck, but the job I work at, I get paid every Monday. So I don't get like a monthly salary. I get a weekly type of thing.
Yeah.
So all I have to do is make it to the end of the week. But because of my terrible, terrible, terrible money management skills, even that is a challenge.
I get it.
And imagine the week where there are big purchases or the rent or something like that. That week we not bougie no more. That week we are in solemn silence in that house. And so
sorrows and prayers.
Yes. So as terrible as inflation is, I kind of want us to take a little bit of
responsibility.
Unfortunately. No, you won't be able to afford a house unless you started saving in like the 3rd grade or as soon as you were born or something. I will tell you this. So I teach little Chinese kids English. That's my other job. And what I found out about them is every New Year's, basically how they celebrate is they have a red envelope. And in that red envelope, everybody in the family, grandparents, parents, older siblings, will give the kids money. And I don't mean chump change.
Money?
I mean money.
Okay.
So they will save up an entire year so they can be able to give these little 5, 6, 7-year-olds a couple thousand at least. They open bank accounts for these kids. These kids get this money every year. So my 11, 12-year-olds have 85, 90, 100,000 yuan in their accounts. For us, that's like 700,000 birr. So they do that because at some point when you do have to sort of make it on your own, or if you need to travel or do anything else, it's to give you a leg up. Is to be like, okay, let me help you pay a couple months rent on your first apartment so the way that we are set up structurally with money as well, we're terrible at it.
There's also that same thing with parents that do that abroad that create like a trust. So like, you know, when their kids go to college eventually, they've been saving since they were children, so that when they go to college, there's this money that was put aside for them to be able to, you know, go to university. So that is a thing for other people around the world.
Other cultures do that. Us, not so much.
So money management is something that as an entire country, we have yet to learn.
Yeah. So you're either wealthy or you're trying to survive, and there's no like
middle ground,
safe in between where you can fit into. So from parents to young adults to people who are now just joining the workforce, money management is one of the ways that until things get better, these are some of the things that we can work on. Because I know you made a purchase that you didn't necessarily need. And sometimes it's good to splurge because but we need to work on our money management. That's one. These are the little hopes, the little things that I feel like we will learn as we get older that'll make these things manageable. Number 2 is we have to let go of this idea that a 9 to 5 is all you need.
You know what's interesting? I remember when I first moved to Addis, there was this older man that I knew that worked so many jobs that I felt like it was impossible. I'm like, how are you living? How are you able to go from one job to the next? How are you able to do all of these things in a given week? And he was like, you have to, otherwise you can't live well here in Addis. And this was like, when I first moved to the city. I was so naive. I didn't know. And now I know. I'm like, I do not just, you know what I mean, rely on one thing. You absolutely can't.
You need, like I said, you need one job for the bills, an extra job just for expenses, and a third one for your spirit, for your soul, to just make you feel more at ease with how many things you have to do. Because surviving in Addis especially requires at least 2 jobs and a little bit of fraud on the side.
Hey, man, that is
a teeny tiny bit of fraud.
That is a topic for another day that people do not want to be honest about.
Just some criminal activity on the side. A little bit, not a lot. Not an aggressive amount. But outside of Addis, so yesterday I was on the phone with my best friend. We're both from Awaze. We're talking about, okay, how is rent in Awaze now? And she was telling me a house the same size as hers next door is 9,000. That is the rent.
How many karis is her house?
Again, I'm not good with karis, but a 3-bedroom house, and then service an L-shaped house in the back, and a place to park 2 cars. So it's huge, gigantic.
Yeah.
But that is 9,000 birr. It's close to the lake. It's by a street. So if I could just pack everything up and leave Addis without also having to leave my job prospects, because I can't do my 2 jobs and a fraud in Awaze. Awaze is very quiet and slow paced, so I can't do all those things. But if I could, I would pack and move immediately. So if your job is not necessarily keeping you in Addis, and if you could do whatever you're doing here somewhere else, I strongly
suggest it.
It's not easy, but I think if you could thrive somewhere else, but you're barely making it here, maybe it's time to reconsider locations.
It's interesting because even Bishoftu, it's like, it's near. And
right here.
So many people are moving there because they're, unable to keep up with Addis. And now even the price of living there is going up.
Because the Addis people have gone and invaded it.
Yeah.
It's us. We're the problem.
Yeah.
We're the villain. Let's go for a break and... Wait, actually, this is our last link, isn't it?
Yeah, this is our 3rd episode and we've come to the end.
Man, any final words, parting words?
I really want to hear what other people have to say. I really want to hear what the audience feels and how they are maintaining life here, how they're able to live on a day-to-day, what helps them get through the day, how much money do they use, you know what I mean, when they're out in the city. I kind of just want to hear from the people and see just the various views of how people stay and live here in Addis.
I would love that. And I would love to get some saving tips, or how I can just manage money better, be more conscious of my spending. So any tools that you guys know of or any tricks that you use to just be better at money management. I hope
people know that we're all in this together.
Yes.
I am quoting High School Musical.
We're all in this together.
Okay. We are. None of us are better than the other. We're all literally trying to, make it out here. So
absolutely. So let us know how life is treating you, what things you're using to keep your sanity together while you try and survive as well. We love you. Stay strong. Don't lose hope. We're going to see the other side of this, I think.
Yeah.
It's hard to be short, but I think.
Like I said, we're all in this together, you guys. And as usual, stay hydrated, make good decisions, mind your business. Bye.
Sending memes back and forth, saying this is so us. I come running for